Wow, I feel sick. And not because I just saw a almost 2.5 hour film about Weinstein. I actually just feeling shitty. So, yeah, I had COVID. I was better for like a few days. Saw this film shortly after it started feeling shitty. So I'm like, okay, well, at least I have a few days off before I get into my next reviews. But for right now, let's talk about She Said. So it's funny, during the day, like, I would say this morning, because that's when, like, I first had the thought, but, like, throughout the day leading up to, like, seeing this film tonight, I was, like, kind of want to watch, like, the movie Compliance, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I was thinking of, the anticipation of seeing She Said, and I was like, well, I love my true dark cinema, whether that be, films like She Said or, Compliance, or it be, Murder Ducks. But, that's a really fucking haunting movie, Compliance. I'm glad I didn't watch it before seeing this. So She Said tells the true story of two journalists from the New York Times and their journey investigating the Harvey Weinstein assaults and helping the victims finally bring this to light and how they did it. Now I say, and how they did that because goddamn did the women have to go through some bullshit. And no, I'm not just talking about the obvious, things that these, women that fell victim to Harvey had to experience, but these two journalists, Toohey and Cantor, oh my god. So we all know the media is fucked, but goddamn, Miramax might just be on another fucking level. This movie does so well because, so I went in this movie not really knowing what to expect in the sense of like how far they were gonna go with like exposing shit or like, touching on some stuff or like, as far as like the depth and detail. There was actually another movie that, centered on Harvey Weinstein, but it was much more subtle. It came out a couple years ago called The Assistant. It also came out to really good reviews. It had to do with, sexual assault in Hollywood. I don't really remember that movie too well. I saw it once when it came out in the theater. And I don't really recall it. It was very subtle. It was very, vague with, even if it had to do with Harvey, I hear it did. I hear he was kind of like, the name in the shadows of the movie. But with this movie coming out, being under Universal, I was like, so what are they actually going to do in this movie? Is this actually going to be the, like, Compliance of fucking Harvey Weinstein movies? But that was like one thing, going into this, I was like, well, this is like a Universal picture. And there already was more or less a film about Harvey called The Assistant. So I was wondering, just like, I hope they aren't playing it a little bit safe, being a little bit vague on some topics, not really going to the full, like, depiction of some certain stuff. Like, if you're gonna make something about a controversial topic such as Harvey Weinstein, I mean, you kind of expect to feel really dirty with that film, You expect that film to really, again, just, be controversial, to fit that topic. And I gotta say, for a Universal picture with, A-list actors like Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan, and also was saying that with a film being 2 hours and 15 minutes, this film did not just center on Harvey. I mean, I lost count of how many times they actually said his name in this fucking film. But not only that, but it does really well with going into, like, the darker side of Miramax as well as a company, the company that fought for Harvey, that, kind of, erased all of the reports, the ones that, said that, they didn't have anything to do with Harvey. But as far as the film itself, I hate to break it to you guys, but it didn't do much for me. Now, this is a very, very important topic, and it is a very relevant, topic as well. And again, a studio like Universal of all, picking something like this up and honestly doing as, much with it as they did as far as, like, what I was expecting or maybe fearing, from a big studio kind of talking about this. They delivered pretty well on it, but my biggest thing with saying that goes into my biggest criticism is that this is a Universal Studios film. And boy, does this thing feel fucking commercialized. But before I get into, those criticisms, I am going to say my first one, just in the right order that I think is, proper. This film, it didn't really seem to have a story in the sense of, like, a beginning or, like, I mean, obviously we know what the conclusion is, Harvey's rotting in, prison, rock and roll, but it didn't really seem to have an actual intro for this film. Which, I guess, is fair. We all know the story. There were, things that he did to countless women in Hollywood. And the film, it does open with a pretty grabbing scene, something that definitely does well for, like, I guess, opening the film and, kind of, like, setting things, into motion. But as far as, like, so, this could be a spoiler, I guess, I don't know. This whole movie is basically these two journalists, working for the New York Times, interviewing countless women, trying to, bring this thing into light and trying to, help these women out with, stating their stories and, exposing the truth about Harvey Weinstein. And again, I just gotta say it. I have a lot of issues with this film. One, they're really just, again, there didn't really, like, I can't recall when these, like, interviews of this movie or when the investigation actually started. It seems like we got a, solid intro for this specific movie. And then after that, we see the New York Times in their, it jump cuts us from, like, the 90s to, like, 2016. And these reporters are just knocking on women's doors and calling random people and just, saying, hey, so we heard this happen. And it's like, yeah, there's only so much you could do with this, while also not playing it safe for, as far as, like, not wanting to, get down and dirty with all that happened. But I suppose also for the sake of just having, like, a solid kind of direction for this movie, which is, yes, again, this investigation. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is, very dark, subjects at times. Some of the women that come forward, the things that they described that, went on with their experiences with Harvey, as well as, the stuff that they experienced afterward, the trauma, as well as, suicidal attempts and everything. Again, don't get me wrong, I think that this film does well with, as far as being realistic and being and being raw. I feel like it did fine with that, but it didn't really give me the feeling of, like, this needed to come out in this format. Like, throughout the whole movie, I was like, aren't there, like, documentaries already about this guy? I mean, we already know this story. Why do we need to see a Universal picture about it? Which, again, don't get me wrong, this is a very important story, but this movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I shit you not, yes, the whole movie is about the investigation, so this is a fair point, but also in saying this, it is 2 hours and 15 minutes, and these people, these two reporters, they're just playing almost like a game of, like, cat and mouse. They're talking to all these, women, they're not getting anywhere, then they go home and, we see little glimpses of their lives that is absolutely 100% just filler. We see them, talking with their husbands or, playing with their kids for a little bit, and then they go back to the office, the next day. They, continue the investigation, or they get a few words out of, some women, and then it ends there. Look, I get it, that this is how it was. But in the format of, again, I'm going to say this a lot, this being under Universal, this almost felt like a spy film. There'd be times where, like, they would get, like, calls in, like, the middle of the night, and, like, someone would say, like, 5 words. They'd be like, oh, if you want more information, and it'd be, like, 3 a.m. They'd be like, if you want more information, contact this person. Hangs up, and, of course, it's, like, storming outside. Same situation where they'll, like, go and meet somebody at, like, a restaurant, and they'll, talk very cryptic, and then they'll show them, like, a briefcase with some documents, and they'll be like, look over that if you want me to put on beat to go on the record. And then they'll walk out of the restaurant without saying goodbye. Same thing happens with this, other scene where one of the journalists, like, sits down with, like one of the guys that was kind of, like, more or less like associated with Weinstein. I can't remember his exact position, but she's like talking to him and he's like, why are you just digging up all the old crimes and none of the new ones? And then he gets up and leaves. And I'm just like, why are you trying to add this much dramatic effect? We know what happened. Just get to the bottom of it. And if you're going to make a movie, if you're going to, gonna go through the controversy of making a movie about Harvey Weinstein, then do that. This commercialized, just cinematic nonsense, it just didn't work for this film. For something this dark, for something like, true crime, it just didn't feel right to me. Like, just like the characters' reactions. I mean, they're good actors, Zoe Kazan and Carey Mulligan, great actresses, but they do this thing where, and I was and mind you, I was the only one my age group in this theater, and this was a packed house, man, full of seniors in it. But there was like many times throughout this movie that people were chuckling in the theater. I'm like, I get it. You get an actress like Zoe Kazan and Carey Mulligan, their chemistry together. Yeah, they've worked with that kind of material, and that is kind of like how their characters are. There's a lot of jokes how like Carey Mulligan will say like Zoe Kazan like you're not that intimidating because you're short. And, Zoe Kazan plays, like, the kind of, like, like, closed off, like, quiet one, where Carey Mulligan has, like, the real voice and, the kind of backbone. So, just, like, that chemistry, I'm like, it just felt a little bit too light for this dark of a film. The format of this being under a big studio with the characters that these people were portraying, I mean, I didn't know the actual journalists, but it just felt weird. It felt weird to add humor and to have this kind of like lighthearted like chemistry in this kind of a film. But also in saying, good actresses, Carey Mulligan, there's a scene in here where she's talking to a character that is supposed to be Harvey Weinstein's representative. It is like a 6-minute scene. Holy fuck, did I get lost in that scene. If there is one standout scene that people are going to talk about from this movie, it's going to be that, and you're going to know exactly which one it is when you see the movie. And don't get me wrong, the movie itself, yes, it does do well with exposing, I mean, as far as being, like, the movie about Harvey Weinstein and, those crimes, this is probably the best we're going to get. It's a big production, it's got great actresses, and it is a 2 hour and 15 minutes, but the whole movie, I will say this, it never really drags. It is a constant investigation about this. Harvey Weinstein this, Harvey Weinstein that. They're interviewing people left and right. There's probably probably 45 minutes straight or more of just these journalists getting to the root of the problem and interviewing these people and hearing their stories. This film, it is not subtle at all. It is 100% about Harvey Weinstein and his crimes, and this film is very confident in that. But also, on the other hand, that is all this movie is. It is a theatrical release from a big budget with mainly 2 women interviewing people. And I'm like, again, important subject, but if you're going to do something in that format, why not just give us a documentary, where the real people are interviewed, or, something that can really flesh out much more background and much more lore about this that really exposes the actual darkness of this. Something like, again, I think of like true dark controversial crime films, and I think of something like Compliance. That film genuinely makes me feel fucking dirty because there's something about it that it's almost made like a horror film. It feels very cryptic. It feels like nail biter. Has things in the film that you honestly can't even believe not only actually happened, but that they're actually going as far as they did to put it on screen. This film didn't do that for me. And again, that's fine. Maybe the film wanted to just go down this route of just being this investigative, film. But still, even with saying that, the tone of the movie, the humorous, moments, and just the overall direction with, characters' reactions and, just chemistry. It just, again, it's not that the acting was bad. It just, for this, so touchy subject, of a subject, it just didn't work for me. And again, the movie is not only that. There are, times in these interviews where, people will talk about their experiences, with Harvey Weinstein. Again, these are all actors, but they will talk about, the things that, their personal experiences with the Harvey Weinstein assaults that they witnessed and experienced, and it is definitely some disturbing shit. Again, even the outcomes, afterward, again, the trauma and the, psychological effect it had on these women, it's rough. And there are things that I was really surprised by, with certain cameos, not just, like there are many, like, public figures, women of Hollywood that, such as Gwyneth Paltrow, for example, that are, brought up in this movie and are, a pretty, solid part of, like, chunk of the film. There is even, some really good background about the journalists, with the, the experience of them, having to do this type of, subject before, where there's like scenes with, other, celebrities or, big men around the world that, have had, this, controversy against them as well. I do think that the film is comfortable with what it is. Yeah, it is a long movie and most of it is, just these journalists interviewing people, but there are other layers to it, and was saying that, some stuff that I wasn't expecting, and it does go to, some pretty, intense measures. And, as far as being a film that is supposed to be focusing on Harvey Weinstein, that is 100% what it is, and I absolutely respect the film for being that confident, for going that far. And, when you look back at it, yeah, it is an investigation movie, but even if it is, just, small, like some small individual parts of this very long movie, I'm happy that they, incorporated elements of different, things other than just the investigation. Again, Miramax itself, notable actresses, as well as other, men before Harvey, where, again, Hollywood itself just, having sexual abusers. This film does really good with just sexual abuse in a Hollywood, period. Again, just at the end of the day, I don't think this type of film in this type of format was really all that necessary. And I think that, with saying that, being a big budget theatrical, film with, the tones that this film had, it was just inevitable, under a Universal Studios, production. And, yeah, some stuff just didn't come off right with me. Overall, guys, I'm going to give She Said a mixed review. Strong mix with that. There are a lot of things I like about this film, but just overall, I just feel like there is a better way that we could hear about this, subject. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review of She Said. Are you guys going to check this one out? If you do, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. I would definitely love to hear other people's reactions to this film. But with all that being said, guys, I am going to wrap it up here. I am going to have a few days to just kind of relax, before getting to next week's reviews of films like Strange World as well as Bones and All. But yes, guys, with all that being said, I hope you guys are having a great night. Thank you guys so much for watching the review, and hope you guys are having a great day. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.